your heart to a deeper walk with God? I think we all have a story. So what was it that really stirred your heart to have a deeper walk with God? Can somebody go with that? And we'll start there, and then that'll start the discussion.
Yeah, so for me, I had grown up in church, right? I grew up in an apostolic family, grew up going to services, and, really when I was about 20 was when God started stirring my heart to pursue a life of ministry, a life of serving Him. We're all called to live a life of serving Him, but really during that season, I think one of the things that I remember was that God's call on my life felt sort of like a call to adventure. If you look at Abraham, when God first called him, it was certainly a call to the unknown, a call to a new kind of life, a call to really a new kingdom, a new everything. And when I was 20 years old, I was in college at the time, but I really felt an unsettled sense about the direction of my life because I had sort of been a self-directed person. I chose, this is what I want to do with my career. This is what I want to do with my future. And God just started giving me an unsettled feeling that, maybe there's more. Maybe there's a different purpose. Maybe there's something that I've always had on the inside of you that hasn't been brought out. And so for me, it really felt like a call to adventure. And so having that vision, that purpose, was something that caused me to want to commit, to want to know God more, to want to really lay everything down. I didn't necessarily, I didn't quit college, but I did have a moment where I laid everything down because that call was so significant for me.
Audrey, do you have anything?
Well, over the past couple years, I had been having a pretty bad struggle with my faith and believing who God was and a lot of messy details, but I think it reached a point where I had chosen my way and I had chosen my path for my own life. And it led me down a road that I didn't intend to go down. And once I hit pretty much rock bottom, I made a choice that I couldn't live in my way anymore. So I made the decision that I was going to let God have my life and let God's way be the way that I follow. And when I made that decision, it felt like everything fell into place. And that's when I really wanted to start digging in because I saw the change in myself when I was choosing my way versus when I was choosing God's way. And I think just the way that God showed up for me and the way that God brought me back to the place that I had been made me want to serve Him more and made me want to dedicate my life to Him.
That's good. I think my life journey it went through seasons where, like, especially in my younger years, camp season would come along and, man, they'd push you to dedicate and you would just dive all in. I'm going to do it. And then kind of fall off as it goes. And then, like, I have the same type testimony as Audrey and really struggled there for a while with my faith and things kind of drop off. Then I went to Bible college. And so I think different seasons of my life just kind of kept bumping me up a little higher in my dedication. What about you?
Yeah, I'm like an all or nothing kind of person. I'm like an all in person. And so for me, dedication has been, particularly in my early years, because I wasn't raised in church, was not even a consideration. I didn't really care. I cared about my soul. I had that God consciousness and awareness. He's put eternity in our hearts. But for me, it was like, I got other stuff I want. And so for me, dedication has had to be a very conscious lifestyle. It's very strange because on one side of the spectrum, I think I've got DNA, some kind of some kind of a internal personality epigenetic or something that is stubborn, and which makes me resistant to God by nature. Let's let that settle in. Yeah, it makes me by nature resistant to God. And so for me, dedication isn't something that's just like, well, this is the life I know. This is the way I'll live. This is the thing. Yeah. And so for me, dedication isn't just like some kind of a natural, it's not like some kind of a natural inclination, although I always felt a draw and a pull to God. It's just that whatever's got my attention at the moment has my full attention. And it's hard for God to have your attention every moment.
So, wow. I mean, that's heavy.
I know, that's pretty hardcore.
But it's very honest and true. So, obviously, you have to work at it, is what you're saying, right? You kind of have to work at it. So,
Still at 56.
Well, yeah, I think we all do. But what spiritual habits help you stay grounded in your faith? What is it that you do? And you're like, okay, this is going to be a struggle for me, so I have to purposefully. So what habits help you stay dedicated?
Well, so spiritual disciplines, if that's what you mean by habits, like spiritual disciplines, that's the thing that I think causes me to say, I think the person is not entirely honest that says that dedication to the Lord is easy for me. Like being really honest.
Well, we live in a world that so comes at us all the time. I mean, you're faced with things all the time.
Yes.
And so we know there's going to be a struggle until the day we die.
It's not our nature.
Right.
It's like it's not our nature it's not our human nature to want to lay our lives down and surrender our will to Jesus.
It sounds good.
No, like it's necessary. It's what we must do. So for me, it was never the theoretical component. It was never the ideological, like this is what you should do. Right. It was this journey of realizing, kind of like what Audrey said. Maybe she gets it from me. I don't know. We're all our individual person, but I'm just saying like that sort of maybe those personality leanings. For me, it was, wow. So are you gonna just keep beating your head against the wall? Right. Are you just gonna keep not having joy? Are you just going to keep? For me, it wasn't this theoretical thing like people would, if I had a pastor that pointed his finger in my nose and said, you're going to live for God and you better be doing this, that, and the other, I probably have the type of personality that'd be like, well, you know what? I have to listen to you. I'm not talking about today. I'm just talking about in my early formative years. But what happened was Jesus is like, you don't have to listen to anybody, but I'll let you see what life is like on your own. And so what happens is so then for me experientially, I'm like, well, I really don't like that. And so I would love to say that there was this sort of this higher purpose that was just bubbling in my soul. But to be honest, in the early days, I'm not talking about my life as a pastor today and whatever. I'm talking about, but I have to admit that you still have to admit that stuff is probably in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And so for me, what the habits were not spiritual disciplines that came out of high theology, but they were spiritual disciplines that were the result of, I like it when God's in control. I don't like it by nature, but I like the end result. Like, I like the end goal.
Yeah.
Like, I like eating cake and pie and ice cream and sugar. I just don't like how it makes me feel, and I don't like how my clothes fit. And so God's like, okay, look, I'm God. I can use your own internal makeup for your good, for your ultimate good. And I don't know. That doesn't sound real super spiritual, I guess, does it? Or maybe not.
Well, no, I think that's what walking it out looks like. The call of God is exciting, but then you got to wake up the next day and take that first step.
Right.
That's hard.
Right.
But what happens is,
Sounds great in the moment.
yeah. But after you take enough steps in the wrong direction, you start to realize, wow, maybe his way is the better way. Maybe like doing it the way he says to do it works out better.
Like the moment you look yourself in the mirror and go, Dillingham, you're an idiot. You want control of your life, but you don't like the outcome of being in control of your life.
Well, it's also important, though, to define dedication, because I think dedication, we often so often see it as being committed and sticking to a schedule. You've got church on Wednesday, you've got church on Sunday. You can be dedicated to going to church without being dedicated to the Lord. Because dedication is being set apart. It's more than going to church. It's like you've got the candlestick in the tabernacle. You've got the ladle and all of the stuff for the burnt sacrifices. They didn't get to choose. Like, they didn't get to go be dedicated to the Lord one day, and then the next day they go get used for a barbecue, for the 4th of July barbecue, They couldn't choose when they were dedicated. They were set apart, and that was that. They're set apart.
100%. Yeah, it's like, do you really belong to God or do you belong to you?
Right.
And for me, when God started calling me to deeper commitment, part of it was just the result of realizing that when I belong to me, wow, things really do not go very well at all. But when you say, wow, I'm going to be a man of God, I'm going to be God's man, that changes everything. Changes everything.
I think too, such great points right there. Like, so from a very practical perspective, the idea of being, like you said, committed, right? You could be committed, but not really be dedicated. You could be maybe say like this: you could be religiously committed, but not devotedly dedicated to the Lord. And so here's what's so crazy is in my own personal journey is what I found was that it's like the Lord said, the earth is the Lord's, the world and they that dwell therein. Like, the spirit of life that is in you is from me. So ultimately, you're mine. But I have given you this crazy thing that's yours that is not mine. And that is your will. That's the only thing in me that's not his. My will. That's pretty freaky. So like everything else is his. My body, my soul. I don't have a soul because somebody, like somebody one day said, I'm going to make a Ken Dillingham. God did. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have a soul because it's like some generic entity that exists in some self-determined vacuum. I have my life because he is the giver of life. And so everything, but then God says, but I'm gonna give you a will. And you can do whatever you want with your will. That means you have ownership of your will. And so, and so for me, I guess that's what I'm saying, is to say that the graciousness of God is revealed inasmuch that God will stand back and grieve when I use my will insubordinately and love me still. Actually hurt for me because he knows I'm hurting myself. But then celebrate when I subordinate myself, my will to him. Celebrating not because, like Sanford and Son, you big dummy. You know, finally getting it, aren't you, Lamont? You know, no, it's like celebrating because God says, I love you so much that in your dysfunctional fallen state, you don't even know, you really don't know what's best for you. You know what you want, and your derelict will, will actually literally say, I don't want God in control of my life. I want to do it myself. I want to choose where I go. I want to choose what I do. And God doesn't step back and say, well, then go to hell then. No, God steps back and says, you don't even know what you're talking about. I think that, to me, I think we just have to start at that. Like, we got to start in that muddy water.
And sometimes when he lets things just completely and utterly fall apart, wow, what an act of mercy that is.
Right.
He lets us see the outcome of our way.
Here's the thing, and this is the thing, this is the mercy of God. God will allow you, me, to be humbled. God will allow me to be crushed. And you're like, what kind of God would do that? I'll tell you what kind of God. The God that knows that there is a way that seems right to a man. You think that this is the right way. But the end is destruction. So here's the problem. If I don't ever let you have any idea, because it feels like the right way. There is a way that seemeth right to a man. I like this. This appeals to my fallenness. And God says, but the end is destruction. So the goodness of God allows me to feel and experience temporal defeats and temporal destructions, so that I don't wake up one day and come to the final eternal reality of the eternal destruction and go, wait, it felt good and right the whole stinking way. What's going on here? So the goodness of God lets my plans sometimes crumble, my way lead to depression and heartache and pain.
The goodness of God leads to repentance. The word repentance is a change of mind. Wow, his goodness led me to change my mind about my own way.
That's so good. Metanoia, right? Repentance, metanoia, to have a different mind after. Sometimes it's like, sometimes the metanoia, we think the metanoia is, and it is, there is a dimension of it that is, come taste and see that the Lord is good. So sometimes after I've tasted and seen that the Lord is good, I have a change of mind. Sometimes my metanoia is after I've tasted the fruit of my own stupidity. I have a different mind. Like, maybe I don't have it figured out. Maybe I'm not as cool as I think I am. Maybe I'm not as big britches as I acted. Maybe I actually stink. Maybe I've got some kind of a nasal disorder that can't smell my own perspiration.
COVID. COVID knows. Does anybody still deal with that?
You know what I'm saying?
Anybody still have that?
I know that sounds weird. I know
No,
that sounds weird, but here's the deal. I don't want to go nose blind to my own spiritual condition.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk into the room and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, get your clothespins out. Here comes Dillingham," and I'm the only one in the room that doesn't smell this.
Isn't it funny how God designed us? Like, as humans, we can't even see, like, the back of ourselves. Like, our eyes are this way. Like, God, even in the way he created us, we can't even see all of ourselves.
You need somebody else without a mirror. You got to have like 2 mirrors. Without a mirror, you literally have to walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, what do I look like from behind?"
And I would totally be the guy that walks out the door with, like, some kind of string hanging off my back or my collar's up. Thank God for a wife.
Let me help you with that. Right? Let me help you with that. And yet we don't want to live in community. And yet these idiots, and I'm using the word, no, because the Greek word idios, no, I don't mean it in a I don't mean it in like a pejorative, like you stupid idiot. I mean the pejorative is not there. Idios in the Greek means by yourself.
Well, it makes so much sense why when people aren't dedicated and when they choose their own way, that's when they stray away from the church and they stray away from, because people in the church are going to tell them and they don't want to hear it.
Right. That's exactly
The minute you lose dedication, that's when you start to.
That's exactly right. And then those are the people who start saying, "I ain't got to go to church.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to
Church
church."
hurt.
They're mean.
Church hurt.
Yeah.
Someone said something mean about me.
Bro, I didn't say anything mean about you. I just said, I'm just showing you what you look like from behind.
You just said, "Hey, your hair's falling down. You need to fix it."
I'm just
Your
telling.
shirt's untucked in the back. Tuck it back in.
Bro, we were right. No, for real. Like we were at a conference and my wife comes out of the ladies' bathroom and she's chasing this woman down and I'm like, "What is she doing?" And she's
I
chasing
was
this.
helping her.
And the woman had tucked her dress into her pantyhose and walked out into the hallway of a general conference. And she's running after the lady. And it's like, look, this is, right,
Love thy neighbor.
this may be an awkward moment for a moment.
Yeah.
Very short moment.
But
It could be
I,
awkward for a long time.
yeah. So I just think that's, like, if anybody ever tells you, I could be saved all by myself. I don't have to have a church. I can just have church in my home. And you're like, bro. Idios is not wise.
In that short amount of time, you guys hit every single point that I have listed.
Oh my gosh.
So
Thanks for being with us today at Lifetalks.
I'm not sure where to go.
Free donuts for everybody.
I really am not. I'm not sure. I will say. So, maybe you can share another time of, since we're talking about community. I'm just going to skip way down to there. How has community, or maybe mentorship, or we'll say discipleship, maybe a next group, I don't know, helped you stay spiritually focused? Can you share a time when someone has come alongside you and helped you in that way? Or can anyone share? I would love for you just to send me a quick text and you can.
Actually, this might be a good time because I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, well, then I'm going to need some help. I need you because I don't either. So, can you pull out your device real quick and just Lifetalks at thelifewaychurch.net and maybe share a time that you have had a difficult time being dedicated, but community came alongside you, whether it be through discipleship or whether just friendship or you received a text, or can you share a time?
One.
While he's giving his, I need some to come
What
in.
is
really,
today's date?
Really come in.
May. Mark it down.
May 18th.
10/18, May 18th. Pastor ran out of words. Mark it down.
It ain't over
Just-
yet.
Just hold on. We're not done.
Mark
I
it
would say somebody hasn't sang, but I won't say that. I'll just hold
I
on.
may catch my second wind, so you better text fast.
You better. All right, give us a time.
So I have had a number of X groups, and I'm going to tell you something. Sometimes coming to the X group knowing that I've got to share with them a spiritual conversation that I've had that week, or am challenged to share what God has been speaking to me or something God's been challenging me with, that makes me have to up my game a little bit. Because I don't want to go to the X group not having a spiritual conversation. Because although having spiritual conversations, those things should be in the natural rhythm of life. It should be who we are. It should be who God is transforming us to be. I still have to engage my will.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that community where I've got some 20-year-olds keeping me accountable and asking me, well, why didn't you have a spiritual conversation this week? What do you think it was that caused you to not have a spiritual conversation? I'm like, that challenges me. And so when we start talking about the things that God is doing and the way he's speaking to us, sometimes the people in my X group will ask me questions like, well, what if the problem is you're not trusting God enough in that area?
That's the power of X groups.
What if the problem is you're not actually believing the gospel? That Jesus is enough for you in that area? Why are you living as though he isn't?
Maybe you believe what Paul said when he said, I'm not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God unto salvation, but maybe you're having a hard time believing it for yourself in your local context.
I think for me, it hasn't ever really been like someone put me in tension necessarily. I mean, obviously you guys have, but like not in a bad way, in a good way, in a discipleship way. But I think also like people who noticed that I was struggling would come up and be like, hey, I've been noticing this, and this. Like, how are you? Like, what's going on? You know, not necessarily like, why aren't you trusting God? More of like a, hey, like, what's going on?
We care.
Like, yeah, you can be honest with me. You can, you know. I think that community also, you know.
What if are there any texts?
No. No.
I'm starting to get my second wind. Just FYI, y'all. What if when God said to Adam, this is just a what if. I mean, I could be totally off base here. But what if when God said to Adam, it's not good for man to be alone? That word man is from the Hebrew word Adam, which doesn't mean male. Adam actually means humankind. It's not good for humans to be alone. What if God said, here's what people don't even know about themselves yet? That they can lie to themselves way easier than they can lie to the community.
Oh, yeah.
Me and Jesus have our own thing going on. No, you don't. That's a lying spirit. You, by one body, or by one spirit, are you baptized into one body? So what if God, in his incredible wisdom, said, I'm going to create community? Because if it's just about that person and their insubordinate will, post-sin, say, if it's about that person and their insubordinate will, they will justify their actions. Oh, yeah. They will lie to themselves and tell them all the reasons why this is okay and not for me. Well, maybe for, you know. But he says, maybe this is what John's talking about when he said, how do you say you love God whom you haven't seen, but you don't love your neighbor? Mm-hmm. Like, is it possible that what God is saying in those scenarios is if it was just you and Jesus, we don't need anybody, it's you and Jesus, that you will find it very easy. This is weird. You will find it very easy to not be accountable to God. Like, this is really weird. People are like, well, ultimately you should be accountable to God. He is God. Yeah. But if I'm pursuing a way that seems right to me, then I may need a community to come alongside and go, you tucked your skirt, or your hair looks really weird, or you gotta, like you can't see the back of you. I'm just wondering if that level of accountability in community is actually our highest level of safety.
Well, the word that has so often been translated helpmeet, Hebrew word ezer kenegdo, means there's such a debate about how that should be translated, but one way is that it means to make up the missing part. I've heard another person who speaks Hebrew say that it also can be translated helpful adversary.
Right. Which in the context of...
In that context.
Yes. In the context of Adam not having what he needs something that opposes him.
Someone who sees it a different way. Yes. Yeah. Someone who sees the other side.
Well, here's the deal. She was his opposite. Opposite is, root word is oppose. That's the thing. But we think of opposing as somebody who is against me. But it's possible that something that opposes me is something that I can actually get a clearer view of myself from.
Right.
Which then becomes the missing part.
The reason your eyes see in 3 dimension is because they see it from a slightly different angle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you hear, like, oh my word, people say this all the time, only God can judge me. And that, there's so much to unpack there, but I think God can judge you, and he's also given you a community to help you, but how willing are you to let God judge you? If you're not listening to your community, are you going to listen to God? Because your community is hearing from God.
In mass. All of us are better. None of us are as good as all of us.
Right. So if you're not willing to listen to your community, who says you're going to listen to God if you're just one-on-one with God?
There's not one person in this room that's more moral than the composite of our community, of our Christian community, of our Lifeway community. Yeah. There's not one person in here that's more spiritual, more rounded, more moral than the composite of our spiritual community.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we all make up one body. You can't have just an eye. Right. An eye can't function. Right. You can't have a functional relationship with God if you're just an eye and you don't have a brain to help you process what you're seeing, Right.
Members in particular.
Right.
This is so, having worked with teenagers for a long time, you see a lot of teenagers who build relationships. Some of them go on to get married. And almost every time a teenager enters into a long-term relationship that's a bad one, almost every single time, everybody around them knew it was bad.
Yeah.
They see it from, yes.
Everybody knows because they're seeing it from a different angle.
Mm-hmm. So that's why they say, when you fall in love, and they say love is blind, you better start listening to your friends and family.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember getting so mad at my mom and dad. There was a guy that I liked in high school, and they kept telling me, I'm telling you, you need to get away from him. Like, no, he's so wonderful.
You don't understand him like I do.
and then look, now I'm so glad I listened. So glad I listened. Here's a comment that came in. Discipleship can challenge you to dig deeper when working with someone who is new in the faith, especially when they start asking the deeper questions. There's a sense of responsibility that we can feel as Holy Ghost led Christians to keep the blind from leading the blind. And in turn, that challenges us not only be in the Word, but to stay in the Word. That is good.
Bro, I think I think that part of too, there's a little thing that you hear sometimes. It has become kind of somewhat popularized. Is that somebody who is in a deep community, a community of believers, or whatever, and this by the way, this is interesting. This is an interesting side. What's the word? Side note. Yeah, yeah. I actually talked to Friday. I was on my way to, yeah, that's right. Friday I was on my way to officiate the West Virginia District Conference, and I had a conference call with two denominational pastors, non-apostolic, okay? And they said, sometimes we as apostolics, we view things from, we're not this enough and we're not blah, 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 and we whatever, and we see it from that perspective. But what's interesting is, I'm just saying, like, when you see things, I'm talking to these two denominational pastors that don't have some of the like holiness standards we've got, or who don't have, or whatever, and they were decrying that the denominational world has turned everything into, it's all just about love and grace, and it's not about, whatever. And they were actually decrying the fact that we have a bunch of people that think Christianity is about the feel-goods, and it's just about, we just need to sing Kumbaya, and we just need to love each other. And he said, and there's a subtle decreasing of obedience and commitment. And I do think it is interesting that, because what we're talking about, like in community, and we're talking about, it is interesting that there's almost this word that's like, that's a cult or whatever. Like, it's almost like any kind of an environment where the community has the ability to actually speak a word into your life is like, oh, that's dangerous. You need to be independent and, whatever. So I'm just saying, like, I think it's important sometimes to even hear from people that are outside of our particular doctrinal persuasion who are saying, like, because I've heard sometimes people are like, they say stuff like, well, those people though, boy, I wish our people were more blah, 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 whatever. But yet they're saying like, yeah, whatever.
Here's another comment that's good. Speaking of community, I think one of the most monumental interactions I had with the community of the body of Christ was after a time I had messed up big time. It was hard because I felt everyone knew and everyone was judging in their own way. It was hard to see the future past the fracture of that moment. But I remember one morning I ran into a leader in my life, and he asked how I was, and I gave the generic answer, but I couldn't hide the devastation, the embarrassment, the shame I was feeling. I remember he grabbed me and looked at me, and his tone changed. And he said, I need you to get back up. I need you to realize that you're human. His grace is for you, and you need to move forward, not in dismissal of your fault, but knowing he has forgiven you and has a purpose for you. It completely changed my life and my trajectory from that very moment. Yeah. Community is important. Communities. Okay, I have a question here, and this, I think we're going to probably come really close to ending with this, but this is a good question. It says, what about the isolation that can come with dedication? Does anybody have any words about that? What about the isolation that comes with dedication?
Okay. So I'm going to have to make some potential interpretations about that. Yeah. Is that personal isolation? Is that missional isolation?
Right.
If you could respond.
Yeah, like isolation from...
Whoever did this comment, if you want to respond to that and kind of give us just a little bit more information.
Because I think the whole thing about what we were talking about was that God has given us community.
Right.
That demonstrates that our dedication to the Lord cannot occur properly without community.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it you see it Well,
you don't see in the New Testament these stories of people who go on these long, lonely journeys into the wilderness for years and years.
we don't see it in the Old Testament. Like
Even in the Old Testament.
Yeah, we see Israel being formed as, I mean, like one of the first things that God does when he calls Abraham says, I will make you a father, of a great nation. And then there's, of course, then there's the 12 tribes, and then the 12 tribes become this big family, and the nation becomes a group of people. Well, then what does God do? He brings them out of Egypt, and then he codifies what their, not just what their religious value system is going to be, not just their religious moral conduct, but also their socio-religious commitments to one another.
I think isolation occurs pre-dedication, because sometimes we rely too much on people, and then God has to bring us back and say, wait a second, you need to be dedicated to me.
We've talked about that. We've talked about sometimes the loneliness.
Right.
Sometimes you feel lonely,
Right.
like I'm not connecting with people. I'm not.
Right.
But sometimes that is God pulling you away, saying,
So that you're
I
dedicated
need
to
you.
him alone.
Right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't last for very long. That's a season that God pulls you away. I think you're going to quickly, as you start dedicating to God, it's pre-dedication. Right. You're going to get back into community, and you need to get back in community. Yeah. Don't let yourself stay isolated, because now we're in trouble.
Yeah, because then he sends you people. I mean, because I was so isolated when I wasn't dedicated. And the minute I dedicated my life back to him, the Lord started bringing me godly friends. And the Lord started...
missional opportunities.
Yes, giving me opportunities to meet people who weren't in church. Everyone, literally every time I go out to a store, anywhere, someone comes up and talks to me. Whether it's about God, whether it's about literally just random people. There's one lady who had, she was allergic to the sun. And she just started telling me all about this. But it only happened once I was dedicated. Because before the dedication, that's when I was isolated.
Well, it's interesting because the fulcrum, even if you think about your work, the fulcrum of my prayers changed when you're going to Raising Cane's before, when your dedication was lacking. My prayers were, God, put a bubble around her, keep her secure, put a hedge about her life. Don't let them pull her away. Right. And then post-dedication, I start seeing this fire come alive in you, and my prayer is, God, let her be a missionary. She'll walk to her car, and I'll say, go be a missionary, as she's going to work. It's the weirdest deal, dedication, the fulcrum of that was, which I do believe that there is this interesting, so that actually brings up a really, really good point about, about having a healthy view of community. That it is first love the Lord with all your heart. Like our any time the community becomes responsible for my relationship with God, Dr. Murray Bowen in family systems theory would say that is an enmeshed, that's an enmeshed culture. So an enmeshed culture is when you are in fusion and nearness. It's that lower left quadrant, right? When you're in fusion and nearness, that you believe that everybody else is responsible for you. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be experiencing this if they didn't this, and if people loved more, if people reached out more, if people texted me more, or what, I'd be, that is actually in family systems theory, that's called enmeshed, and that's an unhealthy view of community, that the community is responsible for me. No. I'm responsible for me, and I'm responsible to be a healthy member of the community. The community is not responsible for the healthy me.
Yes. Yeah, that's like Paul said, bear one another's burdens, and a few words later, let everyone carry their own load.
Yeah.
Start by carrying your load, have the capacity through God's transformation in your life to carry your own load, and be there to help somebody else. It all has to work together. It's unhealthy.
The comment came back in it. Again, it said personal, but it said doing the spiritual work and walking the journey out and being alone through it. So I love what you just said, because yes, you're going to walk your own journey out.
Yes.
But you don't have to be alone through it. And if you feel like you're alone through it, how you get out of that is reach out to someone else.
Well, and also
pour yourself out to them. Don't expect people to come to you. You pour yourself out, and God will fill you with your desires.
Also remember that the scripture says, work out your own salvation, not live out your own salvation.
Right.
There's a difference between working out your own salvation with fear and trembling and living out your salvation with fear. Sometimes if you confuse that little subtle difference, then you will think that that element is living it out. No, we're working it out, our own salvation. But I believe that working it out also means in community.
Because he said that to the entire church.
That's right.
Church, you work out.
He's not right. He's not saying go to your own secret place. Go to your own little private spot. No, you get alone with God when you go to your prayer closet. Then the result is you come back into community and you work out your salvation. Because here's the deal. If he says, how do you say that you love God you haven't seen, but you don't love your neighbor whom you have seen, the first line, the front lines of that is in the biblical community. So that's the first lines of working out your salvation. Sometimes the thing that I need is not aloneness to work out my salvation. Sometimes what I need is somebody to care for, somebody to love, somebody to pour into. Not somebody to pour into me. That's what I was talking about with enmeshed. Right. And I also love, and we got to be done here, but I also love that scripture that says, let him that stole steal no more. We stop there. Right. Stop doing the bad action. Stop doing the bad action. Let him that stole steal no more. Stop doing the bad action. But no, it doesn't say that. Right. It says, but let him work with his hands that which is good. Whoa, replacement therapy. I can't just stop doing what was bad. I got to start doing the good. Watch this. Ultimate transformation that you may have to give to him that is in need. What does a thief do? Let him that stole. What does a thief do? Takes it in with what? A thief doesn't thieve in isolation. A thief takes from others without regard of them. A thief takes from others without regard of the effect it has on them. Yeah. So Paul says, full redemptive cycle is stop stealing, yes. Start working with your hands that which is good. Start some new productive activities so that your heart begins to be transformed, that those people that you never cared about and I can take for you and not even give a second thought about it, now you're thinking about their lack and wondering how can I make a difference in their lives. Right. Now you've completed the redemptive cycle.
Yeah. Carry your own load and bear one another's burdens.
Yeah. That's good. Dedication. There's victory in dedication. Stay dedicated. Stay dedicated to God. Stay dedicated to the body. There was a couple good ones. Josiah, your testimony is awesome. There's a couple others on here. I'm just going to put them in the Lifeway Church family so that you all can read them on your own because it is time to go. But wow, stay dedicated. There's victory in being dedicated to the body, to the Lord, to the church, to the mission. You name it. Amen. Be dedicated in Jesus' name. All right, you have time for a donut. And before you get your kids, you've still got 3 minutes. So hurry and run out there to the cafe. Just bump